Hi there, this is Math with Mark, presented by Mark's Tutoring. I do one-on-one tutoring if you are interested. Today we'll be going over solving one and two-step equations. So let's start with something simple. We're going to do 3 plus blank equals 5. Now, you could look at this very simple, and you can see what the answer is right away. You know that it's 2, right? But as we get more and more complicated equations, you won't just be able to see the answer right away. And so we need to come up with a system to solve this so that we can apply it to more complicated equations that aren't so easily solvable. So what we do is we use a variable, and we usually use x. And so x represents a blank. It could be any number. And our job is to find what x is equal to. And the way to do that is you want to isolate x. You want to get x all by itself, and you want it to be equal to some number. And so the way we do that is we do whatever's being done to x, we do the opposite of it. So in this case, what is being done to x? 3 is being added to x. And so what's the opposite of adding 3 to x? That's right, we're going to subtract 3. And whatever we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other side of the equation. And so 3 minus 3 is 0, plus x equals, what's 5 minus 3? It's 2. And we can just get rid of that 0. We don't need to add zeros. And now we have x isolated, and we have the answer. And we have a system to solve more complicated equations. All right, so let's do one more one-step equation. Do multiplication this time. So here's another easy one that you can just look at and solve. But we want to do this type of equation and do it step by step, so when we have more complicated ones, we'll be able to solve this. So 5 times blank equals 15. That's right, 5 times 3. So we usually use x's as our variable. We could use any letter, but we usually use x's. And so using the multiplication sign like that is kind of confusing. So when we do algebra, we've changed it to a dot, or we changed it to parentheses. And this means the same thing as 5 times x. It's pronounced 5x or 5 times x, whatever you like. All right, so we have 5 times x equals 15. And so what is being done to the x? It's being multiplied by 5. And so what's the opposite of multiplying by 5? That's right, dividing by 5. And whatever we do to one side, we must do to the other to keep it balanced. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And 15 divided by 5 is 3. And do we need this 1 times? We don't, because 1 times x is equal to x, and that's our final answer. And that's what we thought it would be as well. Okay, let's make it a little bit more advanced. Let's go to two-step equations and do the same thing we did before. So let's do 5x plus 2 equals 12. Now this one's a little bit more complicated. You may be able to solve it in your head, but let's do it step by step for the beginners. All right, so we want to do the same thing. We want to get x by itself. And so what is being done to x? It's being multiplied by 5, and then 2 is being added to it. So let's get rid of this 2 first. This 5 is pretty closely intertwined. And notice how I didn't even put a dot this time. If I don't put a dot, it just assume that it's being multiplied. So we have 5x plus 2 equals 12. And we want to get rid of this. We want to get rid of this 2. So what's the opposite of adding 2? Subtracting 2. And so 2 minus 2 is 0. We're not going to write the 0 this time. And what's 12 minus 2? That's right, it's 10. Okay, and now we have one more step. What is being done to x? It's being multiplied by 5. What's the opposite of multiplying by 5? Dividing by 5. And so 5 divided by 5 is 1. We don't need to write that. What's 10 divided by 5? It is 2. Let's make sure it's right. Let's replace this x, this variable, with a 2, and then see what we get. So we have 5 times 2 from here, plus 2. So what's 5 times 2? It's 10. And then what's 10 plus 2? It equals 12. And that's the right answer. All right, let's do one more two-step equation, and then we will be done for the day. We're going to do 8 minus 3a equals 5. All right, now this one is a little bit backwards, but we're going to do the same thing. Okay, so we have 8. So what is being done to a? We want to get a by itself because that's a variable this time. And so 8 is being added to it. Don't let that minus sign fool you. And then it's being multiplied by negative 3. So what do we want to get rid of first? We want to isolate the a, and we want to get all the letters on the left side and all the regular numbers on the right side of the equation. So 8 is being added to negative 3a, so let's subtract 8 from both sides. Minus 8. And now we have 3a equals, what's 5 minus 8? It's negative 3. All right, and now what is being done to a now? It's being multiplied by negative 3. And so what's the opposite of multiplying by negative 3? We're going to divide by negative 3 on both sides. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1. And so we don't need to write that. We just write the a. And what's a negative divided by a negative? It's a positive, right? And then 3 divided by 3 is 1. And so it's going to be positive 1. We can put this in here real quick, do it in our heads. What's 3 times 1? It's 3. What's 8 minus 3? It's 5. And that's the correct answer. And that's how you do 1 and 2 step equations. Isolate the x, isolate the variable, whatever it is, and do the opposite of whatever's being done to it. And start with whatever's being added and subtracted to it. It's easier to do than trying to divide both sides by 3. All right, thanks guys.